So, as I said in the last lesson, that the 2 degrees centigrade, reducing that and not letting the carbon dioxide to be more than that, it's a really difficult call. Because things are so deeply rooted. The way meat industry works, that is so deeply rooted in our system, and the chemicals that are used, the the smoke coming out of chimneys and industries, or smoke from cars. So all these things need time to deal with. It's not easy, but a movement is something that starts. Uh, it is a call to action. So that is quite a positive thing. So there were youth movements also from the 2010s to the present. So Greta Thunberg, it's an important name, and it was she who started this call for climate change, and she inspired various young people to start movements on their own. So the movement that she inspired was Fridays for Future movement, an international movement by school students on Fridays to demand action against climate change for their governments. So this was Fridays where they could bunk their classes and join this demonstration or movement, asking the government to formulate policies to save people from the climate change impacts. So these movements aimed at climate justice and urgent policy action. Scientific, political, and grassroots dimensions were there in these movements. The representatives could have been anyone in the grassroots or in the political system or scientists. So, from wherever the people or the activists were coming, they highlighted the concerns from their area, from their locality. What was the toll of industrialization? It was realized in the 19th century and even a little before that. It took a toll on the human air. So, as industrialization spread, pollution, deforestation, and unsustainable use of natural resources became concerns. As I mentioned, rubber and wood were in great demand. So, wood was cut down, forests were cut down, and uh, rubber plantations were everywhere, replacing traditional crops. So industrialization, it took its toll, and it all led to pollution, to the cutting down of trees, and unsustainable use of natural resources and land. So we know a lot about the ocean water and the rivers being poisoned by the refuse that was coming out of factories and industries. These issues were precursors to modern environmental activism, though climate change was not yet the focus. So, let us again remember, we talked about Earth Day in the previous lesson. It happened on April 22nd, 1970, and it resulted in a formal recognition of environmental activism on a global scale. So many people in America had participated, and what was the outcome of the Earth Day, of this public sanction and public opinion that supported it? It led to the creation of institutions like US Environmental Protection Agency and new environmental laws such as Clean Air and Clean Water Act. So these agencies were created and laws were passed, but we still know that in America itself there's a clash between the industrialists and the business people and the environmentalists. So building dams or changing the course of rivers, these things take a toll on the population in the area. So there have been a lot of demonstrations in America over the creation of a gas pipeline, etc. So somehow the forested areas in which people live, it is their native land, and they feel that pipelines or sort of changing the direction of rivers or trying to utilize the river by building dams sort of wreaks havoc and destroys their livelihood and their life on earth in whichever location they are. So climate science emerged with James Hansen and Charles Keeling, and we already know that they were studying the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and they laid the foundation for understanding climate change. And Keeling's curve, named after Charles Keeling, tracked the consistent rise in the atmospheric CO2 at Mauna Loa Observatory, providing crucial evidence of anthropogenic human-caused climate change. So whenever we read any book on climate change as a science, we find all these details that are there. So the book that is a very short introduction to climate change by Mark Maslin, it talks about these scientific testing and about how and about the ice core test. So there are some basic things that are there in all books that inform you about climate change. Climate change became a distinct movement in the 1980s. Global warming was becoming a public issue, and in the 1980s and onward, climate change was recognized as a significant global issue. The media began covering extreme weather events and growing concerns over rising temperatures. So the coming of television in India around 1984-85 coincided with the news forecast in which the weather was predicted. So the weather became important as important part of the news. And James Hansen in 1988 testified before the US Congress, stating that human activities were leading to observable climate change. His testimony marked one of the first instances where climate change gained significant political attention. So his contribution was his testimony, where he talked about human activities which were leading to observable climate change. It got significant political attention, and we already know that some laws were passed related to climate change impacts. We already talked about IPCC, established in 1988, and it was there to assess scientific research and provide comprehensive reports on climate change. And it played a key role in confirming the scientific consensus on climate change and making it a global concern, making it an international concern. From environmentalism to global climate activism, 1990s to 2000, Earth Summits and global cooperation. The 1992 Rio Earth Summit was a critical moment in the global recognition of climate change. It led to the establishment of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So you can see a whole lot of organizations and panels came up as a form of activism against climate impacts, and there were many international climate agreements. We already know right up till 2020 in Kyoto, in Montreal, so in Paris. So all these international agreements aimed to take some definitive steps to reverse the impacts of climate change. And yet today we see that very little is done. Probably the idea of the habits that we have, that is very difficult to change. Our food habits, our social habits, our modes of transport, these are the things that are difficult to our food habits, our modes of transport, our lifestyle, all these things, they determine the idea of global warming, the idea of excessive greenhouse gases, and governmental organizations or international climate agreements may be there, but unless we at the ground level, the common people, can think in a positive way and try to change our attitude towards how we use the earth and its products, until then, very little will have changed as far as the impact on climate change is concerned. Many times it's the government that is blamed, but the government, most of the time, it responds to the will of the people, to public opinion. If it grows very strong, the government has to take note and form policies. But if the voice is not coming from the affected people or sections of society, from the common public, then it's very difficult to bring about change. And so change involves change of habits, and that's extremely difficult. The idea of having quick meals, packaged meals, and avoiding simple home cooked food, or trying to use automobiles where they are not even needed, where one can walk. So these are some things that can help, trying to regulate these things. One can help in reducing the carbon footprint. Where do we buy our food from? Where do we buy our water from? How much plastic do we have in our lives? So these are things that vary from country to country, but individuals have to work at it. It's not that governments can just put down laws. Laws don't work. It's one's own action that will work. The Kyoto Protocol took place in 1997. It was the first legally binding international agreement that committed industrialized countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Activity during this period became more globalized, with a focus on pushing governments to act on climate change at international level. So more and more international governments came into it, came into the consideration, and they were told to take some steps to reduce the carbon footprint. But all these things have to come from the grassroots level. So unless and until there is activism and response from grassroots levels, the objectives cannot be achieved. Al Gore and Public Awareness 2000. Former US Vice President Al Gore played a significant role in raising public awareness of climate change with his documentary An Inconvenient Truth. The documentary helped form a mainstream audience about the urgency of climate crisis, making climate change a household issue across the world. So he, in his documentary, talked about the basics of climate science and all the current issues, and that was something that made climate change a household word. Youth movements have been very important as far as climate change is concerned, and Greta Thunberg's name occurs again and again. There are various activists who have led movements in their countries, and they have been inspired by her. So Fridays for Future, a movement started by her. In 2018, Greta Thunberg sparked a global youth movement when she started skipping school to protest climate inaction outside the Swedish parliament. Her actions inspired the Fridays for Future movement, which led millions of young people around the world to participate in climate strikes, demanding urgent action from governments. Extinction Rebellion. Extinction Rebellion XR was founded in the UK in 2018. Is a movement using civil disobedience and non-violent protest. So when we hear about civil disobedience and non-violence, it comes to mind that it was Gandhiji who started this form of activism. He inspired movements all around the world. Martin Luther King was also inspired by Gandhiji's ideas of non-violence. So is deep ecology, that also takes some basic principles from Gandhiji and about civil disobedience and non-violent protest. So Extinction Rebellion is rebelling against this destruction of the earth and doing it through civil disobedience and non-violent protest, rebelling against biodiversity loss, and their tactics include blocking roads, occupying public spaces, and staging large-scale protests to pressure governments into declaring climate emergencies. So we can see this is yet another movement, and a great person like Mahatma Gandhi inspired some of these movements. Arne Naess, the Norwegian environmentalist and writer and scientist, has talked about deep ecology, which we'll study later, and how it was influenced by the ideas of non-violence taught by Mahatma Gandhi. Climate justice and equity, emerging themes. So climate justice is also a very important issue when one addresses climate impacts. We know that climate impacts are not uniform. The most vulnerable populations suffer the most. Even the developing countries, they are more vulnerable than the developed countries. They also share that brunt of suffering from climate change impacts. So this climate justice movement evolved because it emphasizes that climate change disproportionately affects the world's poorest and most vulnerable communities. It means giving justice to all of humanity. Indigenous groups, small island nations, and marginalized communities in the global south have been at the forefront of pushing for equitable climate solutions. So we cannot have a uniform policy for climate change because every country and its issues are different. If there are some countries that suffer flooding, there may be others that suffer from drought. But the poorest and the weakest sections of society, they are worst hit as far as housing or food or water resources are concerned. So climate justice movement seeks to address those individual needs for justice for those who are living below the poverty line, or those who are underrepresented, or they are vulnerable. So sometimes they are indigenous groups and tribal groups, or they are island nations, or they are marginalized communities. So climate justice movement addresses them, addresses climate concerns as far as they are concerned. So the movement related to climate justice is very crucial when talking about climate impacts. Role of international agreements. The Paris Agreement took place in 2015 and it was committed to keeping global warming well below 2 degrees centigrade, to pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and also the nationally determined contributions. The conference of the parties. So there have been many COP meetings The conference of the parties under the UNFCCC continues to be a platform where countries negotiate and implement climate agreements. COP26, which took place in 2021, and COP27, which took place in 2022, reinforced commitments to phase down fossil fuels, enhance climate financing for vulnerable nations, and establish loss and damage funds to address climate-induced disasters. So, by the time 22 came along, uh, climate impacts had become much stronger, and the need for fossil fuel also continued to grow, creating more of a menace than ever before. And when there was loss of life, and there was damage of property, uh, degradation of environments, the displacement of people, the negative effect on livelihoods, all these things led to this COP27, in which there was a commitment to phase down fossil fuels, which are also called non-renewable energy resources. And there was the encouragement or the policy to reinforce the use of renewable energy resources such as solar power, wind power, and many more. So, in a country like India, technological and economic shifts are difficult, and they can be very slow. So, transition to renewable energy can be very slow until it is preceded by some kind of um, awakening or some kind of education of people who are not literate, especially in the villages of India. So, this transition, this was the movement that's marked as massive transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydroelectric power. So, even the kind of renewable energy resources, they are different with every country. So, in India, solar power can be used to great benefit, and it is cheap and it is energy saving. However, in polar regions, it does not work. So, that solar energy, it's a difficult issue because of the sun not being visible in colder temperatures. So, it differs from country to country, and when vast populations are poor and they are illiterate, then there has to be some kind of education and awareness creation for them, that how does it benefit if you stop using diesel and petrol, you could use something else. If instead of electricity you could use solar power. So still there are a lot of issues even for middle class families in India. If they want to use solar power, would be not be a very good choice if it's a small house. It's only big hotels and big structures that use it and can cash on the cheap power, but it's not cheap for middle class or middle income groups or lower income groups who have small houses. It's not much of saving of money. So though India can work very well at solar energy, but there has to be a lot of preparation and a lot of help to the weaker sections of society, so that their finances don't suffer if they try to invest in solar energy. So India has started with electric vehicles too, but once again it is a new concept in India, and the cars are very expensive, and in small towns, along with the cars, the charging, the electricity and things go together. So people find it difficult to switch. So it's not so easy to switch to renewable energy. There are various issues in various countries. I just touched upon some issues that are there in India, though solar power has come to stay in India, but still, it is still a challenge, and there's a lot more that could be done to bring solar power into lower income groups. Divestment and green economy. Divestment movement, financial institutions, pension funds, and governments to withdraw investments from fossil fuel companies and reinvest in clean energy. So again, this would be a very big movement and a very big effort that financial institutions should remove their investments from fossil fuel companies and reinvest in clean energy. So this might be easier in a country like America or Europe, but in India such things take time and take some time to educate people about it. So Green New Deals lead to sustainable economy, lead to green jobs. So the whole process is very slow in countries and developing countries like India, but awareness and the movements have given a start to use renewable energy resources. Early environmental awareness in India in pre-1970s. What was it like? Traditional environmental wisdom. India's environmental consciousness is deep-rooted in its ancient traditions and with a history of sustainable agricultural practices, reverence for nature, and eco-friendly lifestyles. So going back to traditional environmental wisdom, that is also one very good option for dealing with the impact of climate change. Sacred texts in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism emphasize the protection of the environment, with forests and rivers considered holy, influencing conservation practices in ancient times. So even today, where religion is very strongly dominant in local areas, in tribal areas, which are less affluent, people do still respect their rivers, and people do try to save their forests. So if government policy took some wisdom from these traditions, it would help. As we move on in our lessons, we will be talking about eco-spirituality, and that takes out the best of religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and even Islam through Sufism. So this traditional environmental wisdom that belongs to religious systems or to tribal systems is very valuable, and because they consider trees and rivers as holy, because they feel that nature is a living form, these are practices that can help conserve the land and mitigate the negative impacts of climate change. As I mentioned earlier, Mahatma Gandhi's ideas have had a global impact. He stressed the importance of living in harmony with nature, promoting ideas of self-sufficiency, sustainable living, and non-violence towards the environment. So these ideas of Mahatma Gandhi have been taken by various movements and perspectives on climate change. They have been taken by the deep ecology movement, and so there are so many movements that have been inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, and early examples of environmental activism include movements against deforestation such as Chipko movement. So we will continue next time. Thank you for attending this class, and in which we discuss some movements related to climate change. We will meet again in the next lesson.